Our visit to Standen House took place on Wednesday the 20th of May 2026. The weather was windy and a typical mix of cloud and sunny spells. Standen was designed to look as though it has always been here, almost as if it has grown out of the rock face and is a part of the landscape. However, the land that Standen now stands upon was originally made up of 3 farms: Stone, Hollybush and Standen. The location commands fine views of the Medway Valley and Ashdown Forest, so it's no surprise that James and Margaret Beale chose this as the site of their planned country house. In spring 1891, they enlisted the architect Philip Webb to lead the project. Webb was sometimes called the father of arts and crafts architecture, and is particularly noted as the designer of the Red House in Bexley Heath. Work began on Standen at the end of 1891. The plans for the house had been revised many times until all parties agreed on the design. Webb often drew inspiration from landscapes and historic buildings and decided to preserve and incorporate some of the medieval farm buildings on the site into his design. Despite these historic influences, Standen was built as a thoroughly modern home, complete with central heating and electricity. The Beales, like many of their contemporaries, wanted a house in the country rather than a country house. Somewhere with no pretensions, no ostentatious displays of wealth. Just the sort of place that the gentle, earnest, socialist Webb was most adept at creating. The interior contains simple woodwork and plaster decoration, with fireplaces individually designed for each room by Webb and furnishings by Morris & Co. The garden was planted by Margaret Beale, with bold and experimental colour combinations, incorporating many unusual plants. Standen was constructed using local materials and traditional construction methods. Only the best materials and workmanship would do, a practice in line with the ideals of arts and crafts. A house should be clothed by its garden. The house and garden were intended to be seen as a whole, and were designed to complement each other. This followed William Morris's theory that gardens were a continuation of a house, and should be used as such. Margaret Beale was fascinated by plants and had a strong influence over how the garden was laid out. The Beales consulted a London landscape gardener, G.B. Simpson, who drew up a layout that assumed that the new house would be located on the line of the existing terrace. However, Webb suggested that it rather be placed further into the hillside. The proposed planting schemes were characterized by strict, geometrical layouts of colourful flower beds and shrubs. Webb preferred something else, however, a mixture of natural styles combining old-fashioned formality and compartmentalized gardens. Webb also designed a number of elements in the garden. Work finished at Standen in 1894 at a cost of £18,065, and the Beales moved in shortly afterwards. The family and Webb had developed a close working relationship, frequently communicating by letter. When work on the house finished, the Beales gave Webb a silver snuff box, engraved with, "When clients talk irritating nonsense, I take a pinch of snuff," which hints at the kind of working relationship the two parties had enjoyed. The family loved Standen and found it met their needs so well that they scarcely made any changes to it over the following years. It became the centre of Beale family life and a favourite place of the grandchildren, who spent fine days exploring the vast garden and wet afternoons playing in the little room at the end of the conservatory. James Beale died in 1912, and Margaret continued to live at Standen until her death in 1936. Their youngest daughter, Helen, bought the house from the family trust and bequeathed it to the National Trust shortly before her own death in 1972. When the National Trust took over Standen, the house was in need of serious repair, and the first custodian of the property, Arthur Grogan, set about revitalising the house and bringing it back to its former glory. Any visit to the garden must start and end at Goose Green, the heart of the garden for a century and more. 3 large plane trees dominate this space, surrounded on each side by domestic and rural features: the kitchen garden, the old farm buildings, the servants' wing of the house, and the medieval farmhouse on a small rise above. Once home to geese, cows and horses, it is now a wonderful place to relax and enjoy these most beautiful of surroundings: the house terrace and quarry garden. Around the house itself is where Margaret showed her real passion for plants. The rarest, most showy, and those that were most special to her were planted within a few yards of the door to the garden from the conservatory. Only the most privileged guests were allowed into this area, which includes the shady and surprising quarry garden. It's so close to the house itself but feels a lifetime away. The lower garden is where the family had fun. The croquet lawn was, and is, a place for sitting and games. The rosary, so recently lost to invasive bamboo, is currently being restored and is the site of the swimming pond where the Beale children used to learn to swim. The kitchen garden. Nearby is the orchard, home to hives of honeybees and many old varieties of apple. Here the grass is left to grow long, allowing wildflowers to flourish, including delicate orchids and the diminutive yellow rattle. The kitchen garden is close to the house and originally nearly 3 acres, almost a quarter of the whole garden. Recently brought back into production after quite some time as private gardens, it's full of a wide range of crops that are supplied to the cafe throughout the year. Within the kitchen gardens there were several metal sculptures by Alison Catchlove. Again, her website is shown within the video description. The sculptures depicted various birds, insects and plants. Unfortunately, as in many properties run by the National Trust, video recording is not allowed inside of the property. A typical example of a living hall, a common feature in late 19th century country houses, it was an important reception room, not just a passageway to others. Originally inspired by medieval great halls, they developed, in the hands of arts and crafts architects, into informal sitting rooms where family and guests could gather. The family found the room too dark and small for entertaining, so Webb was brought back to extend the room. He added an extra 9 feet by creating the bay window, providing the perfect place for the family's upright grand piano. To lighten the room, the original dragon's blood red paneling was painted its current off-white. You can see a small area of the original color near the clock. The inclusion of a billiard room reflects the social status of the Beale family. During the 19th century, billiards gained a huge following. This is where the gentleman would relax, smoke, and play billiards. However, the Beale's youngest daughter, Helen, became an expert player and entered ladies' competitions. Above the table, the brass electric light fitting shows the progressive outlook the family had towards modern innovations of the time. The Morris fruit wallpaper, also known as pomegranate, is original to the house, following the creation of the alcove. The Compton chintz curtain fabric you see at the windows is a modern reproduction and a gift from the Croydon National Trust Centre. Designed to enjoy the sunny south side of the house, the drawing room gives views onto the terrace and garden and across the Medway Valley. The alcove at the far end of the room, designed for private conversation, only has windows on the south and east sides to ensure that anyone sitting there would not be bothered by direct sunlight in the afternoon. Margaret Beale embroidered the vine design hanging, or portiere, based on the wallpaper sunflower designed by William Morris. 2 cushion covers, embroidered by family members, are based on 2 Morris wallpaper designs, pomegranate and trellis. The hand-knotted wool carpet was designed by J.H. Beale for Morris & Co. There are several original Morris & Co. wallpapers in the house. Trellis, designed by William Morris in 1862 and incorporating birds drawn by Philip Webb, was among the first wallpapers to be produced by Morris & Co. This wallpaper can be found in the downstairs corridors of the house. The portrait of Margaret Beale by William Nicholson was painted in 1905. The portrait shows Margaret working on her crochet. In his portrait, her husband James, painted on his retirement, is shown hands folded and inactive. The house contains numerous ceramic plates and vases, many dating from the early 18th century and depicting a chinoiserie decoration. Between 18th April and 2nd of June 2026, one of the bedrooms was used to host Material Things 19, a display by Wendy Dolan, textile artist, and Louise Bell, quilt maker. Their websites are shown within the video description, should they be of interest to you. Little has changed in the dining room at Standen over the years. The green-coloured panelled walls reflect the dining room's original scheme as painted with a colour named thistle. This wall colour complements the large collection of blue and white china plates and hints at the aesthetic art style that was fashionable in the late 19th century. William Morris's peacock and dragon design was used for the woven woolen curtains and chair-back covers in this room. The morning room is conveniently near the servants' wing and faces both south and east, giving the best view over the valley and a great deal of light for much of the day, ideal for the Standen ladies who use the room for writing letters, planning their day, and working on embroidery. The morning room's built-in shelving contains several hundred books, including Mrs. Beale's gardening books, which she consulted as she planned her ideas for Standen's grounds. The wall hangings are a replacement for the originals, which were in tatters by 1972 when Standen came into the care of the National Trust. Unable to find an exact replacement, they have a cream background instead of the soft grey-green of the original and a slightly smaller pattern. The one remaining piece of the original fabric has been made up into a large cushion cover. The curtains are Morris & Co.'s daffodil chintz, and this fabric also covers the walls rather than panelling or wallpaper, giving the room a cosy feel. That concludes our look at Standen. I hope that you've enjoyed this video. I create videos for my own enjoyment rather than any reward, and I do not expect you to like and follow. I hope that you get the chance to visit Standen and support the National Trust in their endeavours. Bye for now, all the best, Mike.